Okay, so in today's lesson, we're quickly going to look at puberty and then gametogenesis. So the last lesson we had, we looked at the male and female reproductive organs. We looked at all the different areas of these places and also the functions of each. Just quickly, I want to do puberty as well. So puberty basically is about certain hormones that get triggered and start to be released in your body right basically when you guys get well around your age, so basically around 12 years to anything between 12 usually and 18 or 20. So meaning you become reproductively active. So there are specifically certain hormones that trigger these changes in your body. So die eerste ding is puberteit. En puberteit gaan oor dat sekere chemikalieë of hormone in ons liggame geaktiveer word wat dan maak dat 'n persoon seksueel volwasse kan wees en ook wat 'n mens 'n vrou maak en 'n man maak. So some of the hormones, firstly, I just want to say where they get produced. So the reason why there's a giant brain here is I just want to show you guys what area of the brain is actually responsible for secreting certain hormones. And if my mouse will just work, we're looking at this area right here. So it's basically to the base. This is the front of your skull. This is the back of your skull. There's this small area here. It looks like two teardrops or two grapes. But this area is basically where these hormones are produced. And just a zoomed in image over this side. This is the top part called the hypothalamus. So here we are, the hypothalamus right there. And this bottom part is called the pituitary gland. So in Afrikaans praat ons van die hypothalamus reg hierbo. So die groter gedeelte, dis waar die hormone geproduseer word en dan partykeer word of geberg hieronder of vrygestel hieronder. So dit is jou pituitêre klier. Ek het nou nie spelling hierby gesit nie, want ons gaan later jaar hormone in meer detail doen, dan sal ek die spelling bysit. Maar die grootste ding wat net moet onthou is dat die hypothalamus deel van die gedeelte is waar hierdie hormone of geproduseer word of vrygestel word. Okay, so this is basically the part of the brain where these hormones are released. And the two hormones that you guys must know about is LH and FSH. We're going to look at them again later the year when we do a bit more detail about hormones. But LH stands for luteinizing hormone, and the FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. So just for now, please remember LH and FSH. If you guys want the spelling, just look in your textbooks. So these are the two hormones, not just in females, but also in males, that are released. And what they do is they stimulate in men the development of the testes, or the testicles, and in females the development of the ovaries. So LH, luteinisering hormoon en die follikelstimulerende hormoon. Die twee hormone is die twee wat basies in 'n man die ontwikkeling van die testicles of die testes aanmoedig, en in 'n vrou is dit om die ovaria, om die eierstokke te kry om te begin ontwikkel. So after these areas in males and females have developed, it also triggers basically in the testicles the release of testosterone. So again, thanks to LH and FSH, men produce sperm and also produce testosterone, that hormone, the male hormone. And in females, from the ovaries, it in turn develops estrogen, releases estrogen, that hormone, female hormone, and egg cells. So basis van jou testicles af, in die testes word daar dan testosteroon vrygestel, en ook wanneer die testes ontwikkel, word daar spermcelle ontwikkel in die mans, en die eierstokke dan produseer estrogen, ons vroulike hormoon, en ook die eiercelle word geproduseer binne die eierstokke. So the main thing, what do the hormones actually do? So first of all, this is basically what you guys have probably experienced during your teenage years. So for men, usually the voice breaks, there's growth of muscle tissue, and the guys usually get facial hair. Some of you, I believe, do struggle a little bit to start the beards and this is snor nou weer in Engels. And yeah, basically all the facial hair and so on. But most of you do that. Again, this is unique to men. So you develop all these characteristics, and that's what also makes men men. So die stem sal breek, die spiere sal begin bou in mans, en dit sal begin gesigshare ontwikkel, en dit is as gevolg van testosteroon wat dit maak. Then also the estrogen in females, usually we don't like this, but we get broadened hips, menstruation starts because of the estrogen, and our breasts start to develop, whether we want it or not, and sometimes it doesn't develop enough for some people, in other cases it does maybe develop too much. So jou estrogen is dan die hormoon wat veroorsaak dat ons hierdie karaktertrekke kry van 'n tipiese vrou. Preheupe, menstruasie begin ongelukkig en dan ons borste begin ontwikkel. So in a nutshell, I just want you guys to remember that with your puberty, certain hormones get triggered and started, and then all these hormones that start to be released by our brains, they develop the reproductive areas in our bodies, in males and females, ovaries, testes, and they release testosterone, estrogen, and then we get these characteristics that makes us male and female. So sekere hormone word vrygestel in ons liggame, en dit veroorsaak dan vanaf die brein, en dit veroorsaak dan die ontwikkeling van die testes in die eierstokke, en dan word van daai plekke af testosteroon of estrogen ontwikkel, en daai twee hormone maak dan dat sekere karaktertrekke ontwikkel in mans en vrouens, wat 'n man maak en wat 'n vrou maak. So then I quickly just want to go through gametogenesis. So gametogenesis basically is the production of egg cells and sperm cells. So now we're going to look at a little bit more detail of what happens when these cells develop. Okay, so in Afrikaans is dit gametogenese, en gametogenese is basies die ontwikkeling van gamete, wat die eierselle en die spermcelle is. Ons gaan nou 'n bietjie meer in detail kyk. So let's start with the males, because it's always fun to start with them. So again, like we said, in the testes of the testicles, this is where the sperm cells will be produced. So is die testicles in Afrikaans, en dit is waar ons spermatogenese kry. So spermatogenese is die produksie van sperm. Spermatogenesis is the production of sperm. So the word starts with sperm, so it tells you it must be about sperm, and genesis means creation. So it's the creation of sperm. So just here we can see this area, the big area is one testicle, one of the testes, and I talked about the seminiferous tubules, and these are these small little tube-like structures right on the inside. This one has been blown up, so the entire thing is part of the seminiferous, is one seminiferous tubule. So die saadbuisies hier binne en een saadbuis reg hierso. Ons kan sien al die saadjies tussen hakkies wat hier gevorm word, al die klein selle, en hierdie gaan die spermcelle word. So these seeds, so to speak, in the seminiferous tubules are basically the immature sperm, and they start to develop into mature sperm. Okay, so the one thing, again, I just want to reiterate, sperm is made inside the testicles, but it gets stored in the epididymis, which is this area. And from here, it will go through the vas deferens and then out the body, so on. But it gets made in the testicles, stored in the epididymis. So jou sperm word vervaardig of geproduseer binne die testicles, of binne een testis, en dan word dit gestoor tot nodig is binne die epididymis, wat hierdie area hierso is. Okay, so we're going to zoom in. What happens for these sperm to form? Okay, so first of all, before you guys start writing, you don't have to remember all these, I just want to get my mouse, all these names of the different sperm cells as they develop. Okay, the main thing to remember is at the end, obviously, you get a mature sperm. So what I want you guys to remember is the method, how it's formed, meaning it goes through meiosis over here, and it goes through mitosis. So you don't have to remember spermatogonium, spermatocyte, all these things. They say for matrix is too much information. When you study in university and so on, then you have to know the names. So I just left the names here just for reference, but you don't have to memorize it. Okay, jy hoef nie die name te onthou nie. Dis nou maar net om vir julle te wys die verskille. Wat ek wil hê julle moet op fokus is die feit dat dit deur mitose gaan hierdie selletjies en dan ook deur meiose, die twee stappe van meiose. Okay, so before we start, or when we start now, I just want to tell you guys, again, these are immature sperm, and eventually they start to grow a tail right here, and later on, they're going to look like the sperm that we know about. So then they have a true head, middle section, and a tail, and later on, I will show you guys in more detail what the different areas, the names or the labels are of the sperm. I just want to show you guys how it forms. So first of all, you have one of these immature cells right at the top. It goes through mitosis. Why? Because if you have one cell, you kind of want, well, especially men, they produce thousands and sometimes millions of sperms. So one cell must divide so that more and more sperm cells can eventually develop. So we just see, or following, we're just going to follow this one. This one will also go through meiosis and these steps later on. But we're going to look at what happens to one cell. So it goes through mitosis, it multiplies, Then this guy itself goes through first meiosis, the first meiosis 1, meaning 1 becomes 2 cells, but again, it was diploid, now it becomes haploid. So we wanted to have half the amount of chromosomes. Then it has to go through meiosis 2, and then we get 4 haploid cells, and all of them are going to be genetically different from one another. After meiosis, it doesn't take very long, then eventually they mature, and they become the mature sperm, and they have the shape that we think about when we think of sperm. It's got a head, it's got a middle section, and a tail to swim. Okay, so basies jou selle, hulle almal gaan deur mitose, want hulle moet vermeerder. Jy wil elkeen van hulle moet daarom meer word, want ons is miljoene of duisende spermcelle wat 'n man kan produseer. So elkeen van hierdie enetjies gaan dan na mitose, gaan dan weer deur meiose. So hy gaan deur meiose 1, nou het hy helfte van die kromosome, so dit was diploïd, nou is dit haploïd. En dan elkeen van hierdie selle nou weer gaan deur meiose 2. So jy begin met een selletjie en kry 1, 2, 3, 4 selletjies na die tyd, almal haploïd, geneties verskillend van mekaar. Na so 'n rukkie dan raak hulle volwasse en dan lyk hulle soos die sperm soos wat ons hulle ken, met die stertjie en so aan. Okay, so what I want you guys to remember again, one cell eventually goes through mitosis first. So please remember it goes through mitosis to multiply them. Then they have to go through meiosis. Why? Because we want these cells, the sperm cells, remember, to be haploid. It must have half the amount of chromosomes. Think of humans. We have 23 chromosomes in our haploid cells, so that when sperm cell meets egg cell, it will then have a diploid number of chromosomes, the full number, which is 46 chromosomes. Okay, so that's basically what I want you guys to take away from this slide. Then we move on to what happens in the female body. So this one is actually a little bit more, I don't say more important, but they do ask this one more easily than the previous one for males. So this one is called, the process called oogenesis at the bottom there at the left. Oogenesis meaning egg production or egg cell production. Oogenesis, that is eierproduksie. So what's the picture we're looking at? We're now actually looking at the ovary. So this is one ovary zoomed in, een eierstok wat ingezoom is op. So this things on the inside represents the cycle, technically going this way, showing us how the cells are developing. So usually we start here, we have this one teeny tiny oocyte or seat, but basically this is the little follicle. Here is how you spell it, a follicle. So it's a little cell basically with the egg cell on the inside. So this is not the egg cell, this is known as the follicle, and the egg cell is right here in the inside. So here it's starting to develop, the cell becomes larger, the follicle becomes larger, and here's your egg cell on the inside, and it grows and it grows, and eventually in the middle of the month, yeah, it's usually in the middle of the month. It's confusing now, periods and ovulation. But the middle of the month, usually, week 2, day 14, ovulation happens, ovulatie. So basically, ovulation is when this egg cell will get released, and this then goes into the fallopian tube. So ovulation, in essence, is the releasing of the egg cell into the fallopian tube. And the follicle, this is the follicle, it has burst open. So ovulation is when the follicle itself bursts open and releases the egg cell into the fallopian tube. So ovulasie is basies wanneer die follicle oopbars, en wanneer dit oopgebars het, stel dat die eierselletjie wat daar binne-in is en wat gegroei het en ontwikkel het, stel dit vry binne die fallopiese buis in. Okay, so this happens once a month. So after the cell then has been released, where's my mouse? It goes away, it does its thing, goes down the fallopian tube, eventually to the uterus. But this follicle area kind of looks like a sore, a place that has to be healed. But this follicle itself that has been burst open, oh, where's my mouse? It becomes the corpus luteum. So the follicle, or the area now that has been burst open, this follicle has been burst open, it becomes like a little prune. Okay, this is what this yellow is trying to show. It becomes this prune-like structure, and it's called the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum in Afrikaans, selfe spelling is Latijns. And what the corpus luteum does, it stays here for a little while, and then it starts to shrink in size, till eventually we don't see it anymore, it vanishes. Then the entire cycle starts over, one egg cell and follicle starts to develop, so on and so forth, and this entire cycle goes over and over. So from this point, all the way around to that point is 1 month. So in week 2, ovulation happens. The egg cell is released outside of the ovary. And then 2 weeks it takes for the corpus luteum to vanish. And then from the start on, we start with a new follicle. So we're going to talk later on when we talk about pregnancy what the corpus luteum does, but basically what it does, it releases progesterone, which is also a hormone that can actually help pregnancy. So if fertilization did happen, the corpus luteum will stay behind, it'll stay here to release progesterone. If fertilization does not happen, the egg cell is shed out of the female body, then it will vanish. It's not needed anymore. Okay, so na ovulasie word hierdie follicle wat hy oopgebars het, wat eintlik maar 'n seerplekkie is, word hy baie klein en hy lyk amper soos 'n pruim of 'n rosientjie, hy raak so opgerimpel en hy bly hier vir 'n rukkie want hy skei progesteroon af. So progesteroon is daar of is 'n hormoon wat afgeskei word om ek kan onthou pregnancy is nie, om swangerskap te onderhou sodat die babatjie ontwikkel, die fetus ontwikkel binne die ma. Maar as swangerskap nie gebeur het nie, as die bevrugting nie gebeur het, spermsel, eiersel nie, dan gaan die ouetjie later aan verdwyn. Dis hoekom hy hier begin kleiner raak en later aan verdwyn hy. So dan is dit nie nodig om progesteroon af te skei nie, want daar is nie 'n babatjie binne die baarmoeder nie. Okay, so this is in essence. I want to say if there's still something unsure about the cycle, either re-listen to how I just explained it, or please ask me, WhatsApp me. I am available to help. Okay, then the next one. This is just quickly to show, to compare what happens, the same thing as we talked about with the male production of sperm. Now this is the area where the production of the egg cell happens. So we just saw what happens in the ovary, but here again you have one cell, it goes through egg cell, immature egg cell, all called the oogonium. It goes through mitosis. So again, 1 must become 2. So it goes through mitosis. We're just going to look at the 1. The second one would have been here. We're just ignoring it. So it goes through mitosis. Then secondly, this guy itself has to go through meiosis 1. So 1 becomes 2. And here they even show you it was diploid. But because of meiosis 1, it became haploid. So then you end up with 2 haploid cells. But something to remember about the formation of an egg cell. Yes, it has gone through meiosis, and 1 cell became 2 cells, and they're both haploid. But you'll see it is different in the sizes in this picture, and this is called a polar body, a polare lichaam. So there isn't going to form 2 egg cells here, and another meiosis division will make it 4 cells. No, it's very unique actually. So there's just 1 egg cell that's eventually going to become the egg cell, the ovum, developing, but this is called a polar body. So the polar body is basically also a cell, but it's not the egg cell. It will either vanish later on, and in some instances it actually is used as food, a food source for the egg cell. So the first meiosis division gives you 2 haploid cells, but 1 will become the egg cell, the other one is called a polar body. Then both these, sorry the picture doesn't show it, but both of these goes through meiosis 2, and then you end up with 1, 2, 3, 4 cells. So 1, 2, 3 polar bodies, but only 1 egg cell or ovum. Okay, so basies die hele selletjie, die klein eierselletjie wat ontwikkel, hy gaan deur mitose, weer eens jy wil eintlik baie eierselletjies hê. Ons volg net wat die een met die een gaan gebeur. Hierdie enetjie gaan deur meiose 1. Een sel word 2 van diploïd word hy haploïd, en dan hierdie ouetjies ook gaan deur meiose 2. Dan kry jy 1, 2, 3, 4 van hierdie selletjies, maar jy gaan hê 1, 2, 3 polare liggaampies wat maar net leesselletjies is, en dan 1 eiersel, 1 ovum. So these 3 will eventually vanish, or again, like I said, they will become the food source for the ovum. But point being, very unique about this sequence of events, it only creates 1 egg cell. So a question I got last year was, if we only get 1 egg cell, what is the point of going through mitosis and then through the meiosis again? Why do this if we're not going to have 4 cells but only 1 ovum? So the reason is, firstly, is again to get a diploid egg cell to be haploid, okay? But another reason why it must go through again meiosis 2 eventually is for genetic diversity. So remember when we talked about meiosis, we talked about on the metaphase, you have your random segregation of the chromosomes, and that causes your genetic diversity. So this has to go through the process of both meiosis 1 and meiosis 2 for that genetic diversity, so that every time you have a little egg cell, there possibly could be 4 different types of ovums to form, but the chance of this specific one having the genes that it will get at the end of this process is random. We don't know how the chromosomes will arrange here in metaphase. We don't know how it will arrange here in metaphase to get these. So every time is random. That's why every single baby of the same mother will be different. Meaning, I know it's just a one egg cell she produces and it needs a sperm, but that's why it's going to be different, because it's going to be completely unique based on how the chromosomes are arranged. Okay, so hoekom moet hierdie stel deur mitose en meiose gaan as daar net in elk geval een selletjie gaan gevorm word van hierdie een oorspronklike selletjie? Ons wil hy moet vermeerder, dan wil ons hy moet deur meiose gaan, en weer eens volgens jou liekrake verdeling, jy wil hê die chromosome, ons weet nie gaan die chromosome op die metafase, die middelpunt van die selletjie hulle self rangskik nie, dis alles liekraak. So dit moet deur die proses gaan omdat dit die liekraakheid van die chromosome veroorsaak. So dit meng die DNA van die moeder sodat die kleintjie, die eiersel wat die maak, gaan heeltemal anders lyk. So it's all about genetic diversity, alles oor genetische diversiteit. So that's why it has to go through this process, and eventually if you have your ovum, then obviously your sperm will come to it. It'll even cause more genetic diversity in the cell. Okay, I think I'm going to stop this lesson right here and do this bit in the next one.